There is not going to be a primary article that answers every single one of your questions. That doesn't exist. But what does exist are a bunch of data points that you can use your brain to put together and take the next logical step all by yourself. You don't need somebody telling you what this data means. You can make up your own goddamn mind. Let's just talk about COVID for a second. All right.
Yeah.
So what was if to the best of your recollection, can you walk through the information you as somebody who's consuming right-wing media, what were you being told? Like, what was how were you supposed to be a good American to combat COVID?
I mean, because I was consuming all of the media, but when we didn't really even take it seriously until a little bit around like March of 2020. Like we started seeing hints of it in November, and I remember going to Vegas like the ass end of February, and I saw one person with a mask on at the airport, and I was making fun of them, and then a week later it's like everybody had a mask on. I was like, what the fuck is going on here? And, I was working out in North Dakota, so I didn't really catch any of the COVID stuff for the first 11 months. Like I think it was January of 2021 before I put a mask on, and that was only for college. And it was the stupidest thing because like I had my glasses on, I had my mask on, you couldn't even see anything but my nose. It was out of control. But to be a good upstanding citizen, to answer your question, you needed to take your vaccines. You needed to have social distancing. You needed to stay at home as much as possible, not interact with people, couldn't sing, dance, kiss, go to bars, whatever. The best thing you could possibly do is just play computer games at home, and if you weren't an essential worker, just take your money from the government and stay at home.
Were the COVID-19 gene therapies then still a big deal for you guys?
Therapeutics, nobody was really talking about the therapeutics. It was just, I remember very specifically Pfizer's therapeutic, remdesivir or something like that. I can't remember was it remdesivir? Anyways.
Oh, there was resveratrol that they were giving people in the hospital, but I don't think that was.
No, there was just one therapeutic that I knew of that was approved by Fauci and the government. And I want to say it was remdesivir. But it was like, this is it. This is the only thing that's going to protect you until we get vaccines. And if you get COVID, it was ventilators and remdesivir, I believe. And the only way to prevent it was to stay indoors, and
that's what you were being told. That's the information you were receiving.
That's what I got, and everybody was pretty lockstep. Pfizer had all of the advertisement bought out for that year, I think. So
did you end up getting the jab? Did you do it?
Yeah. They were talking, Biden was talking about shutting down the freeway system. So I wasn't going to be able to drive home to see my girlfriend at the time, my wife now. So I just bit the bullet and got it done. Still a big regret of mine. I wish I would have just not done it. Because I'd already had COVID. I got it in Christmas 2020. So or 2019. Yeah, I had it in Christmas of 2020.
So you speed ran. You were like, how do I get COVID as fast as possible?
Yeah.
I want to be top 10 across this finish line.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was crazy. 11 months after we started taking it, or 8 or 9 months after we started taking it seriously, that I got COVID for the first time.
That's much later then. Yeah, because mean, it wasn't really even on our radar until October 19, right?
No, March of 2020 is when we started taking it seriously.
No, but we didn't, as a country, it really wasn't in our media until
oh no, it was all over our media in the beginning
late
of 2020.
I'm thinking
late 2019 is when it was hit in China, and everybody was like, Trump was like, let's close the borders, and everybody's like, he's xenophobic, Dude,
so. I'm still a big listen. I am not a racist, right? I'm not a racist. I'm not. I at the time, and still for the most part, am not a big fan of Trump I don't like the shit that comes out of his mouth. Like
He's not. Yeah,
he could try to be a little more tactful.
he doesn't
But he
have
isn't.
tact. He's.
I laughed when he came out with Kung Flu. I fucking lost it. And all of my family and everybody looked at me like I was the worst person ever because I was laughing my ass off because that was funny.
It's funny, dude. It's funny. It is. It's quippy. He's quippy.
Yeah, I liked it.
And he's so quick sometimes, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure he came up with that shit on the fly.
Oh
like,
yeah,
when he was talking. It said it's probably said COVID-19, and he was like, "No, fuck that." He's like, "No, like the Kung Flu is what this is."
Yeah.
Like, let's go. I loved it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me tell you my experience.
Yeah,
exactly the same.
Yeah,
CNN,
I think everybody had it.
We all
the
had
same
the
experience.
CNN, social media, YouTube. Everybody was feeding us the same thing. Yeah. Stay indoors.
We're in this
Don't
together.
Go to the hospital. Wear a mask. Social distance if you absolutely have to go outside. And as soon as your age group is available, get the jab, right? Yeah. Moderna, Pfizer, doesn't matter. Yeah. Just go get one of them. Yeah. We were told, additionally, though, so the extra bit that I got was hydroxychloroquine is a poison. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that happened much later, though. That was like a year and a half into it.
No, we started getting it. If left stuff, we started getting it really, really early. Like hydroxychloroquine was could kill you, okay? And ivermectin was a horse dewormer. And it wasn't until later that it was like March, okay, of that year of 2020 when Trump's came out and said, "Hey, look at these drugs.
Yeah,
start taking them." Then suddenly there's an extra narrative that, hey, look at the stupid right. Like these morons are taking horse dewormer to these guys.
Yeah.
And I was like, and it was perfect for me. Hook, line, and sinker. I was like, yeah, the right does make up a bunch of stupid people. And of course they would take horse dewormer. They're not going to look into it.
Right.
Meanwhile, I did not look into it. I just straight up bought the narrative.
Like, I'm in. I don't want to be stupid and careless and not good for my community. Yeah. That's how they got a lot of people. I mean, I watched an interview with Como, right? The governor of New York. And at the time, he was just like laying out craziness, right? And they did an interview about all of it. And he's like, we just made it up on the spot and people just fell in line. He was like, it was the craziest thing. He's like, we didn't have precedent for it. We didn't have authority to force anybody to do what they did. He's like, we just talked about it and everybody fell in line. I was like, I'm watching this interview, right? And he's like been disgraced. I think he's going through legal battles and all this crap. And I'm just like, holy crap. Like, you just made it up and everybody fell in line. There was no science behind it. It was just
none
control. And
so let's just talk about that real quick.
Yeah.
So the science. All right. So masking.
Yeah.
Completely made up.
Completely made up.
There was even out of
Fauci was against it. He was against it at first, and then there was money to be made, and he was like, "Oh, masking, got to put a mask on."
And so, if you, for everybody who's listening, look it up. If you don't remember, you lived through it, so just search your memory banks. Because early 2020, masks are silly, and then Trump started rallying against masks, and then that was a call, a clarion call. Trump said something about masks. We're going to do the exact fucking opposite. And then, like you said, there was money in masks, and Fauci could get a little on the side. But anyway, then he totally jumped ship, started mandating masks with zero science.
Zero science.
Actually, there was plenty of science that suggested you should not wear masks for prolonged periods of time unless you absolutely have to. As an adult, as a full-grown adult, you're going to be more okay. You might get more sick because of all the humidity that you're going to be breathing in for 8+ hours a day. That's just not good for you. So you might end up getting stuff, right? Have some respiratory issues. But especially if you're a kid, if you're young, do not wear masks for long points of time because that will straight up inhibit brain growth. All sorts of things in your body will be inhibited because of these things. And this was known prior to COVID. But guess what?
I mean, just look up restrictions for wearing ventilators for a long time, or not ventilators, but oh man, what am I trying to think of, Jesse?
H95s.
Yeah, just strong dust masks that painters wear. It's those huge.
Oh, those
real strong. Yeah.
Yeah, those particulate filters. so you don't get breathe in paint. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Paint fumes and all that. That's the kind of stuff that filters out like germs and viruses.
Yeah.
They actually have the ability to filter small particles out,
Yeah, and even to a degree, though, it's still not good for you. You should not wear those things for
no. What I'm trying to say is they've got strict regulations on how long you're supposed to be wearing those things at any given
very
time.
minimally, and you have to change those filters every day.
All
like
the time.
You literally, you cannot after 8
you
hours.
You can't just put your fucking cloth mask in your back pocket and take it out and put it on whenever you need to.
No,
and keep wearing the same mask for fucking 3 years. If you
wear a cloth mask, you are actually damning yourself. You're going to get something. You're going to walk into something in the air. It's going to get stuck to your moist fucking mouth now. That's just a little bit of cloth. It is going to develop into something. You're going to get sick. It's 100% going to happen. Yeah. And so anyway, masks. Fauci and his entire, and the NHI, basically, is that whatever? NIH. There we go. Yeah. His department was basically saying, hey, you gotta wear masks. You gotta wear masks. Even though, as we were just saying here, viruses are smaller than the molecular, meshing of these masks, so they're going to go right through it. The same thing with the water vapor. It'll stop some water vapor, but not all. But more importantly, it didn't do anything. Like masks actually really didn't do anything to stop. There's no study that demonstrates masks prevent pandemics. That doesn't exist.
No,
that study does not exist.
The only thing that they're good for is stopping large particulates when you sneeze and cough. So if you're asymptomatic, it doesn't do shit for you. Right.
Which was the other thing they lied to us about. They made the problem worse because they were keeping asymptomatic people locked in with symptomatic people. Like, hey, you both need to quarantine. When that was not the case at all. There was no study in the history of studies that would demonstrate that you need to lock up asymptomatic people. You need to quarantine. That doesn't exist. That study does not exist. Yeah. And yet it just promotes fear. And of course, you start hurting people like the kids. Right.
And now the old people in the old folks home,
they were screwed.
It's insane. Yeah.
Fauci damned them all to a very early death, very lonely death too. Yeah. Like there's nobody there to support them.
And if you've never watched Rand Paul have his conversations with Fauci on, in Congress on stand, well, Fauci just sits there and lies to him. You could go back and watch 4 years of Fauci just lying on the stand, and that's supposed to be perjury, basically. You should be like, I'm pretty positive it is. Like, if you sit there and lie to Congress, you're in contempt of Congress, and they can. I don't know why they haven't charged him, why they haven't gone after him. Like, you could just go back and read or watch his interviews in Congress, and you're like, he's lying the entire time. Like, we know that now. We didn't know that then.
And so, yes. So armed, I would challenge anybody who's listening to this, armed with this information, go look up. Go try to find any study that suggests masks prevent pandemics. You won't find it. Fauci would later say that there was none. Okay. And that he later said that, masks were ineffective. Okay.
Yeah.
And then go watch him flip flop like 2 or 3 times. And over the course of those 3 years. So ridiculous.
And then he just made up that 6 foot rule. He literally just made it up. He is like, there's no science behind this. 6 feet.
Just like we have asymptomatic people, by locking up asymptomatic people, by keeping them quarantined, which was completely there's no reason to do it. There was no reason to do it. Same thing with the 6 foot. The 6 foot rule. Nope.
Yeah.
There was what he was trying to say is like, oh yeah, if you sneeze or cough or breathe, that's like, what was it? It was like that 6 feet plus mask equals you won't spread the virus.
Yeah.
According to who? According to what study? Nothing.
Nothing.
He totally made it up. He made it up. And these were things as a good left, highly intellectual versus my barbarian friend Zach, who is this Bible thumping right winger. I was like, I know, of course, this makes perfect sense. I can use my brain, and it will make sense why 6 feet plus mask was good. But hey, guess what?
I think I remember one of the worst arguments that we had was about masks.
Probably.
I got so mad at you. I was like, why won't you just look anything up?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's part of the problem. Is that and this is why I'm so fucking mad, is because the very people that we put in, that we elected into power,
right,
that we have staffing these agencies who are supposed to be doing that research and looking out for Americans, prevent me from having to go do that research.
Right, because you don't have time. You don't have time.
And I'm not a doctor. I don't study this shit, nor do I care to.
Right.
But we're actually getting to how this whole thing started. Why I'm suddenly just so far now, like away from the institutional left, is the treatment of COVID through ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine and a whole bunch of other things.
Yeah.
So when did you first hear? Did you ever hear? Did it ever come out of Fox's mouth that these two drugs were bad for you, or you should avoid them?
No. They constantly were like, everybody's trash talking ivermectin, but it's got 50 years of clinical trials with malaria, and I just read, I think I sent you that primary article about how they're using it in conjunction with cancer treatments to help you. I can't remember what the exact terminology is, but basically, so it doesn't make you immune or resistant to the cancer treatments. So, used in conjunction with ivermectin, it helps you get through the cancer treatments, basically. So, I mean, it's a pretty amazing drug. And Fox was like, do your research, talk to your doctor, make educated, informed, discussions. And they never once called it horse dewormer or anything like that, because they would show clips of the people like Don Lemon trashing it, and
right.
The other Como that got kicked off CNN. So
yeah. And that was all I was listening to, was just that over and over and over again, how bad hydroxychloroquine is for you, how stupid it would be to take ivermectin because it doesn't do anything. Well, guess what? I dug into it. I started looking into it. And sure as shit, as early as 2005, all right, and this is a cursory, very superficial investigation using NIH's own studies. And again, this is where Fauci comes from. This is his department in the government, okay?
Yeah.
In 2005, plenty of studies demonstrating ivermectin specifically working against COVID-like viruses and having resounding success. We're talking about the introduction of ivermectin to a sample of tissue or whatever contaminated with COVID would lead to that virus being reduced by 99.9%. Crazy. Absolutely. And that was in 2005 when they were just fucking around. They're like, what else can ivermectin do? It's doing everything else, so maybe it could deal with these viral thingies. And sure as shit, it did. Hydroxychloroquine, the same thing. And what was really interesting is that both of these drugs were shown, studies were shown coming from the NIH directly to be effective against SARS, MERS, and COVID.
Yeah, I think I read that same exact primary article in science class in college.
Yeah,
it's an introduction science class that was like, here's a primary article. How do you read it?
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, in any case, this was information Fauci had.
Yeah.
Fauci would later come out and say that they were completely ineffective. As a matter of fact, to prove his point, he took hydroxychloroquine, gave it to in a whole bunch of studies with old people, young people, middle-aged people, whatever, found a bunch of people with comorbidities, aka things that were going to kill them anyway, right? And then not only gave them hydroxychloroquine, but gave them lethal doses of it.
Yeah.
And then they died.
Well, that's how they banned pot, right? They put people in a freaking room with pot smoke and displaced the oxygen, and then they died.
No, it was
monkeys.
It was monkeys.
Monkeys.
It wasn't that,
but they were like,
wrapped.
These monkeys freaking died from pot.
Yeah, did you see the pictures? They had masks. They had those ventilators,
so
pumping smoke into them, and then they just suffocated and died.
Yeah. And they're like, pot's bad for you.
Yes, and they did the exact same thing with these. So you have a bunch of older people who, and by the way, they didn't even get affidavits saying like, "Hey, yes, we consent to this."
Oh, wow.
They literally would get it after the point if they survived.
Wow.
And not to say everybody died, but with comorbidity, with lethal or damaging doses of hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin, of course they're going to lead to deaths. And a whole bunch of people died. There's something like 17 unique studies where they did this, killed a bunch of people, and then Fauci would come out and say, well, hey, in my studies, this is killing people.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, if you look at why they discredited those things, right? There are only one or two therapeutics on the market, remdesivir, I believe, and maybe something that Moderna's vaccine, because Moderna was Fauci's company, right? He's heavily invested in Moderna. And there's a reason that there were only two primary companies that had vaccines, and that was Pfizer and Moderna. Johnson & Johnson came out with a one shot, but then they started talking shit about that one too and saying that it wasn't effective, but then fast forward 2 years and you have everybody's Congress all over the world asking what the effectiveness, of these vaccines were. And they went from 100% effectiveness to like 33% to 23%, and it's just like, it doesn't even stop the spread of COVID. And they were touting how much it stopped the spread of COVID. I've got friends that took 4 boosters and still have caught COVID 3 or 4 times.
Same.
So,
There is somebody, I don't want to name him here, but
right.
this particular individual, they spent a lifetime in the medical industry, literally a lifetime. They're retired now. Insanely smart person, right? I would try. I literally go to this person with any sort of medical advice before I call my doctor, because they just know. They've been doing it for so long, right?
Right.
This particular individual, when they retired at the very, very top of their organization. They were way up there. They know everything there's to know about everything. And this particular person followed the protocol, the COVID protocol, as we've been describing, getting every booster and whatnot. And so they're up to like 6 now or something like that.
I think it's more than that if you're
however
following the
many
regiment. Yeah.
Yeah. So this person has done every little thing. They got COVID a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Like this late into the game.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And so obviously I'm worried for them, and they're okay. They pulled through. But it just goes to show like what is it? And I actually looked into this. I looked up the NIH's own study on the effectiveness of all of this gene therapy.
Yeah.
It was, I think it was something like 50 some odd percent, 54%, something like that. That is a flip of a coin. Yeah. You can go and take our untested drug, which will modify your fucking genome, and then 50% of the time you're still going to get it. Or you just get it and it's like a flu. Who cares? Nobody gives a fuck. Your body, as it is right now, your healthy human body will likely just deal with it, and you may never even know you had it.
Yeah, if you didn't even have comorbidities or anything like that.
Nope.
It was just going to be a regular day in the park for you.
Yep.
Maybe you got loss of taste and smell like I did, or, a little bit of lethargicness for a couple of weeks. But,
yeah.
I remember watching a video about Fauci, right? He was talking about mRNA vaccines, and that was the primary research they were doing on HIV vaccines. And the reason that they still haven't released a mRNA vaccine for HIV, even though they've been doing studies on it for 15, 20, 30 years now, I can't remember the exact number. It's been a long time. They didn't know what the adverse effects of their clinical trials were a decade after administering the vaccines. A decade, Jesse. So we just pumped the entire world full of this crap without any clinical trials, and we're going to see what the next decade brings about.
It's not going to be good.
No.
It's not good.
No.
I'm already suffering side effects. Yeah. I already am. And so before, like every other person on the planet, you get bit by a mosquito, you get like something, a little bump the size of a pinky, right?
Yeah.
Smaller than a dime, whatever.
Yeah.
Not very big, little itchy, no big deal. Now, if I get bit by a mosquito, we're talking something, I will get a welt potentially the size of $50.
Oh my gosh.
It's horrible. So I have to be extra fucking careful now. Man, it's not just itchy. It's actually not itchy at all. It's incredibly painful.
Yeah.
So I got. You were actually going down another road by it. I thought you were going to mention this. How do you know how Fauci was able to literally speed run the introduction of all these vaccines and gene therapies into
I think
the American
it's
public?
something to do with Trump's warp speed, lifting a bunch of regulations with his Operation Warp Speed. So
there is a caveat in the FDA. So if there is a public health crisis
Mm.
and there is no current drugs known to treat that crisis,
Mm.
then they are authorized to permit, drugs, a new drug, an untested drug, to be used for the people,
I
right? And
gotcha.
it's only in case of emergencies.
Right. So if there's no therapeutics and there's no anything else out there,
Yes.
and they trash talk a bunch of therapeutics and make them
Yes.
unviable, all of a sudden now they can release vaccines to the public.
So they were colluding with the FDA. So this is, I haven't actually dug into this, but if you look at the timeline, okay,
Yeah.
they were releasing the vaccine. What was it? The summer of 2020. Okay.
Yeah. No, I think it was 2021.
Oh, is it later than that?
I don't. Yeah, I don't think we had vaccines for
Well, when
almost
did,
a year
because
and a half, 2 years.
when did the old people start getting it? The elderly.
Uh, I'll have to look. It might have been as soon as like March of 2021, but I don't think there were any vaccines before 2021.
Got it. I don't remember myself, but the fact is this: ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, just by like the studies that we have already mentioned, and by all means, anybody who's listening to this, you can just simply Google NIH effects of hydroxychloroquine, replace that with ivermectin on COVID, and you will be directed. The first couple links will come straight from the NIH with their studies. Okay, you can go look it up, and the dates are well before 2020. Okay, anyway, so they had to, like you're saying, they absolutely had to. Fauci had to demonize these two drugs, and the FDA had to have reason to then go and not only block their usage, but then go and permit this other stuff. So what happened is they had to get all these studies together that showed hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin killing people to have the FDA block it. And then they had to then go ahead and have something to replace it with, which was these mRNA vaccines. What's even more insidious and really, really strange is in early 2020, all right, out of fucking nowhere, like we're talking, it might have been late 2019, France quietly rescheduled hydroxychloroquine from OTC to class 2. Why? Nobody was talking about it. Hydroxychloroquine was nobody knew anything. Nobody cared about hydroxychloroquine. But all of a sudden,
nobody talked about it until Trump talked about it. Because I remember Trump talking about hydroxychloroquine and Rogan talking about ivermectin.
Right.
And those two people brought therapeutics to the light of the public realm sphere, and that's what started a lot of this bullshit. Because, like you said, they must have needed to trash it so that they could release their vaccines to the public.
That's exactly it. And so that was France in 2019 or early 2020. Canada did the same thing. And what's worse with the Canadian one is that those Canadian like medical banks that take in donations from hospitals and drug producing companies to kind of like have a backlog just in case there is an outbreak of something, suddenly said like, hey guys, we need more ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine in late 2019, early 2020, because, and so of course people started donating like shit tons to this stockade that existed in Canada somewhere, and then as soon as they got as much as they thought they were going to get, rescheduled, made it impossible to give it out, and they refused to give it out.
Wow.
And additionally, if you go back down to the FDA, they hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin were shown again for years and years and years. It's good. It could treat COVID, but they demonized these two drugs so well that they refused to permit that. The FDA said no doctors can prescribe these medicines to COVID patients specifically.
Wow.
If you had something else that this might treat, by all means, but for COVID, no, because we don't know what might happen. We don't know the interaction of the COVID virus plus these drugs. We don't know.
Right.
And that was their rationale. Absolutely insane.
I mean, even with Trump signing into law the right to try, like if you had something that was killing you, you have a right to try anything that's out there on the market. You had a lot of doctors that were hesitant to prescribe hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin.
They were scared.
Because, well, yeah, I mean, it's
Lose their license.
their doctors were losing their licenses for talking about COVID on the internet.
Yes.
You know, like losing their entire livelihoods. It was destroying people. I mean, it was almost as bad as what they did to the military by having people refuse the vaccines, even if
Right.
they had medical or religious exemptions. Like it's insane to me, you know.
It was crazy. And yet,
Yeah.
after all of this, okay, all of these safety protocols, the United States had the worst death rate of any economically developed country in the world.
Recorded.
We crushed it. Yeah,
Well,
yes, we
it's
did report
because
it.
okay, so like the reason too, and I'm not saying 100% the only reason, but we recorded it all because hospitals were getting paid for every COVID case that they handled, death or alive. It didn't matter if you walked out of the hospital dead or alive. If you were in a hospital and you got recorded as COVID, the government was giving medical institutions a shit ton of money per COVID case treated, you know, or handled. So, I mean, of course, we're going to document the shit out of COVID because it's
Right.
a free paycheck. You could go in there with a sniffle or a skin knee and they're like COVID.
Right. Everybody
It
had
didn't
to go.
matter. Yeah. So, I mean, with that kind of mentality, of course, America is going to have the most documented cases of COVID. Like China, no, they never had COVID. North Korea, not one case.
Yeah. Well,
not one case in North Korea.
Russia was like point something, 0.3 or something. You know, I get it, but that's why we're only talking about like those of us who are actually reporting it. Europe,
I know.
States,
Yeah.
South America. Ours was like just like the worst. It was horrible, and it didn't have to be. And a lot of these other countries had to yell louder than the FDA in their own countries. People were like, "Yeah, I don't want to take ivermectin; it's bad." And I hydroxychloroquine, and the doctors they were like, "You're fucking crazy! Stop listening to American giggle gaggo. It's perfectly fine. Like these things work." Did you know that if you had to go to the hospital because of COVID and you needed a respirator, right? Your bill for the respirator would be about $35,000 if you had COVID.
I did not know that.
About $35,000. This is before health insurance, all that stuff.
Right.
If you went to that same hospital with a different respiratory illness that required or distress that required a respirator, $10,000.
Wow.
What? Maddening, sir. Pure insanity.
Our healthcare system blows my mind sometimes.
I
wish there was a better option, but I don't know that there is a better option.
No. Ours is
episode.
That is entirely something I'm digging into right now. I'm digging into the depths of the FDA and its corruption and how bad it's hurting us. Did you know? Did you know? Okay. Just follow this. This is just a segue. This is our next podcast, but just hear me out here. Who makes Roundup? What kind? What?
Bayer?
Who makes it? Roundup.
Bayer?
No. Monsanto's.
Oh, I thought it was Bayer.
You know why you think it's Bayer?
Because
Bayer just bought Monsanto's in Germany. Guess what Bayer makes?
Pain reliever.
Bayer is the leading developer of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma treatment. Cancer. So they make the treatment for the thing that Roundup produces. Roundup is the number one contributor to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in the world.
I believe that.
The thing that creates it, or the thing that cures it, was just bought by the thing that creates it.
Yeah.
There is nothing fishy going on there, Zach.
Dude.
Nothing.
You remember when we were in Key West together and Zika came out? It hit Key West hard, all of Florida hard.
Yeah.
What blows my mind is like looking up who manufactured Zika, right? And why they manufactured Bayer, right? Because they wanted to kill mosquito populations, and they figured releasing genetically mutated fucking mosquitoes into Florida and other places in the area would reduce the mosquito population. No, they just created a freaking pandemic. Not one freaking suit, It's probably because like some government bought it, and now they can't sue them. Like what happened with COVID vaccines, Oh, we just gave the government what they ordered,
Yeah.
Can't sue us.
No. And the mosquito problem in Key West when we were down there got out of fucking control. Dude.
Awful.
So
I'm sure it's still bad.
It's probably that was even worse. But the thing is, when I first got there, all right.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know me well, I have a dog named Whammo. At the time, he was like 7, 8 years old, and I lived near a beach called Geiger Beach. Okay, and I would take Whammo down to Geiger Beach in the afternoons after work, and I'd do a jog, and he would run with me. And except he's a crazy dog, he'd be all over the place having lots of fun. Anyway, so after work one day, this is, I don't know, probably a year after I've been there, we go down to Geiger, and we get about halfway through our jog, and I don't know what happened, what fresh hell, like echo from hell occurred, but all around me, this dark mist started to rise on this beach in the waters on either side of me. Okay, they just started to rise, and I looked up like, what the fuck is happening? It looked like something out of Silent Hill. Okay, really fucking creepy. And I looked, even Whammo stopped. It's like, what the fuck is happening? And this is as far as the eye can see up and down the beach. This fog, this black fog lifting out of the ground. And it was all mosquitoes. I was like, oh shit. And so luckily, Whammo is a very smart dog. He just saw me take off running back to the truck as fast as I fucking can. I'm 6'5". I can run fast. Okay, and this dog, he knew. He passed me running back to the truck. And dude, those mosquitoes were just swarming me. And I was like slapping them off my body, my face, my hair. And I jump into the truck, and they were all on my back. So I was like rubbing my back and whatnot, trying to get these fuckers off me. Whammo just jumped straight into the back of the truck. We speed down. Dude, I was covered in mosquito bites. It was disgusting. Thank you, Bear. You motherfuckers. That's nightmare fuel. I still get from time to time.
Yeah.
Okay. Segue complete. Okay, we talk about more about the FDA later, but they were instrumental by Fauci kind of like using them to release this emergency proclamation to enable these therapeutics to hit the market that benefited him financially. Yeah. He circumvented the very cheap drugs, hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, which are like $10 to $3 a pill, and they would have made him zero money. Okay, zero cash. So
I don't think they make anybody any money right now.
No, but it's ridiculous. That I literally like you know me well, but I am so pissed. I'm so mad because I was lied to and I bought it without any. I did not put up any
line and sinker, man. Hook, line, and sinker.
Right through the defenses, right through the mental defenses. I didn't even think anything about it.
All they have to do, right? The propaganda. They just have to tell you you're smart and you're doing good work, and you fall in line. I mean, that's what happened to 80% of our population in the United States. This is for the good of humanity. You're a very smart person. Do these things. And boom, you're like, yep, I want to be a good person. I want to do what's best for my fellow man. Boom, you're done. And then it just reinforces some bias in American culture because we want to be good guys. We want to do good things. That's how they get us.
Right.
So,
yep. Another interesting, we were talking about ivermectin as an anti-cancer medication. Yeah. And it's not, what's really interesting with it, as I was actually digging into this, you were talking about it a second ago, is that it helps the cancer therapy. So this one doctor who is an oncologist, a surgeon specifically, she just removed cancers, growths and stuff like that. She was referred a patient. It wasn't even a patient. Referred a person. Stage 4 prostate cancer, metastasized to the bones. This guy was done. And she was like, well, your best bet here is to seek a priest and then find hospice because you're done. You got, maybe a month, maybe less, And they got to talking, and she had just randomly heard that ivermectin might be useful as an anti-cancer or as like a cancer fighting agent. And she's like, honestly, I shouldn't be giving out this advice as a doctor, but since you are literally done, you're cooked, there's nothing else we could do for you, give it a shot. It can't kill you. It can't kill you any faster than the cancer is killing you now. Right. I don't know anything about it. Give it a shot. And the guy did. And so he went and took it, started taking it, and reported back to her in like a couple weeks. And he was still alive, but, still dying. 2 weeks later, still doing the therapeutics, still taking ivermectin. Better. He was a little bit better. He gained a little bit of weight, a little less gaunt. A couple weeks later, better. And then like 3 months into this, he's like, good. Like he's out walking and dancing. And like this guy is surviving, not doing anything else.
Crazy.
And then he actually ends up going in full on remission. They measure the cancer, the cancer agents in his body. It's not cancer itself. It's a marker to cancer. And like normally in the human body, it's like, you have a problem if that number hits like 4. When this guy first went to go talk to her, it was like the number was like 200, like dead, right? And then with the last time that they met, his blood was drawn, it was like 1.3, and he was doing good. And it turned out, so they studied. She wanted to dig into it. Like, why is this happening? Like ivermectin, it's an antiviral agent. Like, why is it like at best? Like, I'm not sure how it's working against cancer, and it had nothing to do with the cancer. But what they found is that ivermectin was enhancing like killer cells and some other things, but it was getting the immune system to protect the normal cells, and while ignoring the cancer cells. And so the viruses that were just naturally in his body were attacking and killing just the cancer cells. It's like a very interesting way to address cancer. And sure shit, so she started prescribing this to more people, and it started working. And so now, as you know, you kind of alluded to it, ivermectin has got like this foundation now to actually support going and seeing how it might.
Yeah, I mean, there's already been at least 1 or 2 primary studies that I've seen on it, and it's amazing.
I would bet
considering how cheap it is.
I would bet you so much money that somebody on that plane in Brazil that went down.
There were 8 of them. There were supposed to be 16.
I bet you one of those guys was working on it.
I bet you the whole team was working on it, and they were going to go prepare and do something for the whole scientific community.
Yeah, we were probably this close to getting rid of cancer.
Can't have that.
Because you know how easy it would be to. So I lived in West Africa. I had to take doxycycline once a week for the entire time I was there. So 3 years the first stint, 2 years the second, whatever. It doesn't matter. I was there for quite some time, and we wouldn't, we could get bit by mosquitoes and whatnot, malaria, but because we had doxycycline, they would just automatically kill the malaria. We would go on. How easy would it be for the human race to just take an ivermectin every Sunday just to prevent cancer?
Yeah.
How easy would that be? $10, $10 a month. Done deal.
Low aspirin regimen for
blood. And maybe that's what they were about to say. Hey, world, just take this ivermectin, 1 pill on Sunday, and you're going to be good to go.
I think they're still doing clinical trials on long-term usage of ivermectin. So,
the whole West Africa, India, have been doing it for decades.
Yeah.
So that just go. I mean, they're healthy as could be.
Yeah.
As long as they stop, lopping each other's arms off and shooting at each other, they're actually quite healthy people. Okay, so that is number 1. That's the first thing that I am now going to be. That's reason number 1 I'm voting for Trump is because Trump was all about that. He was like, guys, take hydroxychloroquine. Do it. Take your ivermectin. Stop with this ridiculousness. And then he got booed out of the stadium, right?
Yeah.
And so he was right. He was right.
I mean, when he in that infamous speech that he was talking about, where he was talking about injecting disinfectants into your bloodstream, he wasn't talking about bleach, which CNN fucking ran with. And I remember he said a disinfectant. He's like, there's disinfectants that you can use, medical disinfectants, but obviously he's not a good speaker, right? And so everybody no, he can talk for long periods of time and he's funny, but he is not. It's like talking to your best friend, where you guys know exactly what the hell you both are talking about. That's how he speaks, right? He assumes you know what the fuck he's talking about, and he's just talking, and it makes him very easy to spin. Very easy to spin, which is what the left has been doing to him.
So is that where the bleach came from? Like how? So because put that together for me.
So basically, he got up in front of everybody and he was like talking about disinfectants, right? And he was talking about medical disinfectants, things that kill viruses, that kind of stuff. He wasn't talking about Lysol and bleach, right? And you can go back and watch the video. I'll find it for you and I'll send.
There's somebody very close in my life that just referenced this yesterday, and I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm sure Trump was not telling you to put bleach in your veins, and they were like, that's what he said.
He 100% said disinfectants, and everybody was like, Lysol? bleach, and that's all CNN would talk about for like 2 months afterwards.
Yes.
He's like, oh yeah, he wants you to fucking inject bleach in your body. And you're like, again, that's not what he fucking said, jackass. But whatever.
Right.
I'm not here to police your propaganda, but I get the spin, but there's a certain point when you're harming the rest of humanity, spinning somebody's words, instead of just saying, it's a very valid point medically, you could do something along those lines. Why don't we look into it? But instead, they just had to disenfranchise anybody that could even possibly think about voting for Trump. And so they had to just spin everything that came out of his freaking mouth and try to make him look like a moron.
Right.
Yeah.
It did a good job, because I remember hearing that. I distinctly remember not ever hearing him use the word bleach.
He never did. He never used
I was
bleach.
like, why is Trump telling people to put bleach in their thing? I remember briefly looking it up, and I was like, well, I can't find anything where he says this.
No.
But it must be true, because CNN's telling me this. So
yeah. And then I get irate text messages from Jesse. Why does your president want bleach in people's veins, Zach?
So does this feel good? Is this like therapeutic? Like you're hearing all of this? Like Jesse's come full circle now. Like you were vindicated across all points.
I would much rather have my friend back on a path where we feel like we can have a conversation without just shutting it down. Just like, shut up, Zach, you're stupid, right? Like, it feels way better to have that connection back than any other, like, oh, I need to be right. Like, I would much rather the whole country put down their pride and just come back full circle and realize that we've been kind of being fucking led by the nose by the political left in the wrong direction at a breakneck pace. It's like they put us all on train cars and they're like, this is where we're going. And everybody's like, well, I don't want to go that way, but we're already on the train. Let's go.
This is, it's really hard for people. I was trying to explain this to somebody else.
Yeah.
Imagine just using Trump as an example, because Trump is so easy here to pick on. But you and I and 99.9% of the rest of the American public are never going to be able to sit down and talk to Trump. That's never going to happen. The only way you're going to learn about Trump is when he is behind a press briefing.
Yeah.
It's the only time.
Yep.
Or he's in the Oval Office, right? Or you're going to read his kooky Twitter messages, which don't really help. But that's for the most part, though, if you're going to look at him and watch him speak, it's coming from the press.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. The primary method for you to get to know anyone in a public sphere is through the media, right?
And who controls the media?
Yeah.
That largely even Fox plays into this game, but there is just a handful of people, and the majority of them all left leaning. And it's not just ideologically. I wouldn't give two shits if the people who run CNN just have they're more liberal than they are conservative. Fine. But that's not the problem is that where they put their money and how they're using their money to influence their own beliefs.
Rich
and
people.
That's where, and it gets even worse than that, because it's not just news. If it was just legacy media, who cares, right? They're us out the window anyway.
Right.
Social media is all 100%.
Yeah.
100% owned by left-leaning individuals who are more than happy to contribute their billions and billions of dollars towards whichever initiatives they think are going to help, promote their ideology.
Which was huge for, Twitter to be bought up by Musk.
Yeah.
So
ripped it
that
away.
People could have one platform besides True Social,
That's
where I know it's not a thing. It's mostly just something so he can't ever nobody can take his voice away again.
Right.
Because you can retweet Truth Social just fine.
Right.
So.
Right. The point here is this, though. Like, if you are an American and you're trying to learn about Donald Trump since 2016, if you go to your media, your newspaper, or any social media, the systems that host that information have all been geared to smear Trump and his agenda, all of them. And so using COVID as one, where COVID, this was after his presidency, but he still had a platform because he was a former president and still Donald Trump. As soon as he started talking about hydroxychloroquine, immediately the gear shifted and just ran him and hydroxychloroquine hard into the ground. Yep. Where if you were going to YouTube, and this happened, where all these doctors were coming together and putting their research on the effects of ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine on COVID and how they're amazing at fighting the virus early. You don't give these drugs to somebody who's like 2 days away from dying from respiratory failure. That's not going to help you at that point. Like you're way too down the road. But if you're taking these things early, like you start to get the fever or the sniffles or whatever, and you start taking it, perfect. You're going to be just fine. Those types of videos, when they hit YouTube or Twitter or even anywhere in the Google algorithm where a search result on Google.com might surface this finding, was shut down and hidden. Yeah. There's examples of, well, one, it was super obvious. Twitter was straight up removing it. If you put anything on there that was contrary to the vaccine, you were kicked off the platform. Your account was suspended. The same thing on YouTube. If you put anything on YouTube that was contrary, that spoke ill of the vaccine, the vaccine in air quotes because it's really gene therapy, again, your channel was likely banned or shadow banned. And then even in Google Docs, if you had documents that you were working on that was anti-vaccine, they could very well, and this happened to a prominent doctor, be deleted. Not straight out of your Google Drive. Gone.
Yeah, it's crazy. Crazy. I was just going to say, I remember watching doctors just losing their jobs, being deplatformed because they were coming out. And it wasn't just even hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin. It was like, I watched this one doctor talking about how boosting your immune system with magnesium, zinc, and vitamin D, and going out and getting moderate exercise was a better, preventative medicine than anything that you could put into your body after the fact. And it's just crazy to think that we were like, follow the science, do the things that are good for the population, but there's like no science behind it. It was just, here's a new religion, follow it blindly.
Right. This was a thing where is there a fan on? Like suddenly a fan.
No, I think my wife is running a bath or something.
Oh, good for her. Okay. Yeah. So, where were we? What were we just talking about? That's my train of thought.
Sorry. We were talking about deplatforming, social media, shadow banning.
Right. Okay. So circling all the way back. Now, what we just described here, like, how does that actually impact you? How does it impact somebody who's specifically like me, one of my fellow left-leaning, left voting, people in the United States? All the things that we were told through the FDA, NIH, Dr. Fauci, CNN, MSNBC, all these sources were telling us that the vaccine was the right way to go, and it was reinforced over and over and over again. All these protocols, stay indoors, mask up, all that stuff was reinforced over everywhere we looked. You social media, your normal media, your newspapers, everything. Literally everything was saying that. And at the same time, demonizing Trump, and anybody who had anything good to say about Trump wasn't allowed. You weren't going to read it. You were not going to encounter it. It was literally impossible to find. You would never, at no point in time, if you, as a logical, rational, intelligent person, wanted to see the other side of the story, could you find it? It was not available to you.
Yeah, that argument was gone.
You only had the one perspective, and that was the perspective of these small group of people who are pushing this COVID-19, this wacky harebrained COVID-19 protocol so they could sell the mRNA vaccine. Yeah. That was the only thing we had. And so there was no opportunity for us to have even to start to formulate thoughts that were contrary to this opinion because it was just the one thing. And so unless you were a doctor in the field that knew that these drugs existed and did their thing against COVID-19, that was the only time, those were the only people that could really form an opinion outside of what we were being told. And so
Or
for
if you
me,
followed like Rush Limbaugh.
right, no, fuck that guy. But listen, so but yes, to your point, that it's true. And there was a few people who weren't silenced. Actually, Rush Limbaugh was kicked off of Twitter. So he had, if you're going to listen to Rush, you had to find him on shortwave or, on AM
radio.
Yep.
That was it.
And so, but for the rest of us, my point is this: if you're like me, then there was not even an opportunity for us to exercise that intelligence at all. We couldn't, because we only had one side of we only had the bad information, and we didn't have anything else to compare it against. And then suddenly now, today, you have an opportunity to go check 4 years of information that you were being fed from the FDA and the NIH. And if you, like me, do your research, and you will come to the same conclusion, because it's glaringly obvious that you were fucking lied to by these people. Yeah. These same people that you, like me, voted for. And I can't stand for that. There's just no way. Like, don't get me wrong. The right has their fair share of corruption as well. They're going to lie to us for their own agendas and blah, blah, blah. They're going to do everything to inject oil right into our veins so that, because that's far superior to blood. All right. There's more energy. It's more renewable than your own blood. But I will take that over COVID, because COVID, how many people died in the United States needlessly over COVID?
There's millions. But I mean, we don't actually have a good number, because they were just
hundreds of
there was just a checkbox next to COVID for every single person. So
millions of people got it that didn't need to have it, but hundreds of thousands of people died needlessly. And so, by all means, be corrupt. But if you're going to go out and lie to people, kill them in interest to make money, like, that's at the end of the day was what happened here. It was a redistribution of yet even more wealth. No, fuck you. I can't deal with that. There's just no fucking way. There's no way. And so the only real solution now, from a political point of view, from my side, the way I see is that these people are willing to do that. Bring it back Trump into office and let him actually drain this fucking swamp. Like, he has to literally level it. Like, he can't go in there in onesie twosie, like replacing people. No, at this point, the FDA has to be completely inverted. Everybody in the FDA has to be fucking fired. The NIH, you just need to take the people at the top. The researchers, the people contributing to all those primary articles, for the most part, they're good. The articles are there. They were trying to say the right thing. They did say the right thing. But the people at the top who were parroting that information were lying to us.
It's hard to read a primary article. It's hard to read, that kind of stuff. Like, if you don't have the ability to read legalese or primary articles, I mean, how do you do your research, right? Because most of the stuff is written that way on purpose. Because most people don't have the time, energy, or intelligence to try to digest something like that.
I certainly don't.
It's hard. It's hard.
Soon, there is there are two great leveling events that are happening in terms of the very intelligent keeping information away from the less intelligent. I count myself as one of the less intelligent. Like, I can't read a primary article and really understand at a deeply technical level what the fuck it's trying to tell me. I can, there are abstracts. I can read an abstract and I can likely get the general gist of what they're trying to say, like what discovery was made, what something might be used for. But in terms of how it might be impactful or why, fuck that. I'm not going to be able to understand it. But the first point I'm trying to make is that we have access to that information. No longer do you have to be a clinical physician or a theoretical physicist to go read a primary article. You can go find it online and you can read it for yourself. The second thing is AI. AI can take that primary article and distill it into layman terms, and it'll tell you exactly what this thing is going on. I use it every day. When I was digesting all this information, I had ChatGPT cranking through, 5-6 articles a day for me because I couldn't really understand it. And I put all that together, and now I have a foundation where it is 100% crystal clear that we were lied to. But it's because we have access to all this technology, and it's partially why, J9 or J13, whatever, J13, we know that it had to be an inside job because of all the crowdsourced information. No longer can CNN and Fox and MSNBC and CBS and NBC and ABC tell us the story. No, we were
Right.
fucking there. We were there. We recorded it with our phones and put it up on Twitter, or X. Everybody can see what happened.
Yeah.
You don't have to rely on their narrative anymore. So anyway,
They can't scrub the internet, you know.
no, they cannot. It's
And you
fucking
know,
amazing.
Musk is doing really amazing things for America and the rest of the world by allowing Twitter to stay, or X to stay open to public discussion like that. Even his AI that he's crafting specific for legislation, so you can put a 1,200 page document in there and it tells you all of the corruption. It's like, oh, well, we don't want that. We don't want that earmark. We don't need that. You know,
Right.
so he's doing pretty amazing things. So if he does get into, you know, the Dodge department with Trump, that'd be pretty amazing. You know,
The Department of
it is efficiency, government efficiency.
That's
Department
it.
of
Department of Government
Efficiency. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that was pretty much amazing.
Yeah. So it would be awesome if something like that came to be, you know. So you see Americans, true Americans, people that believe in this country coming together, you know, doing things like Public Square, trying to bypass, you know, Wall Street and starting their own Wall Street down in Texas. These really amazing things happening where they're like, we are sick of the corruption. We're sick of all of this string pulling from behind the scenes. You start seeing private intelligence agencies working hand in hand with this stuff. And it's awesome to see this kind of stuff happening because there have been no government oversights that can look into what's going on behind the scenes. So, and they've been just running wild behind us because we've been too busy to double check on them. And
Exactly. By the way, a correction. It was hydroxychloroquine that I was talking about, which enables healthy cells to remain healthy while viruses and whatnot will then attack the cancer cells. That's hydroxychloroquine, which is really, really interesting.
And then ivermectin is the one that allows you to take repeated dosages of cancer treatments without getting immune to it or whatever it is, where you can take a medicine and then your body starts rejecting it.
Right.
Because, again, not a scientist, you know.
Right. It's it's absolutely, it's just crazy that we have this technology though, that we're able to have these conversations. And it's really interesting though, like if this podcast was to pop off, right?
Yeah.
And we had more people watching it, this right here, this episode will earn us a strike.
Oh yeah.
Our channel.
For sure.
So,
for sure.
Because when and all we have done, there's no hearsay here. Everything that I've said is backed by NIH's own studies and documentation.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's what.
And you can look up anything and everything. I mean, Fauci's emails got released to the public. You can look through that and see his stances on a bunch of crap.
Right.
You can watch him and freaking Rand Paul up in the Senate hearings.
Yeah, Rand Paul is tearing into that poor dude.
Tearing into him. He's like, I don't have to be a virologist to freaking understand what the hell is going on right now.
Right.
You know, we can have a conversation doctor to doctor and, you know, get this and just getting lied to and ran around constantly for 4 years.
Right.
So he did good work with that.
Yeah. And the whole origin story of this is still interesting. I just started looking into it just very briefly, right? We're talking about, you know, gain of function research that was banned in the United States, shipped to China. China was already doing it. And then using Fauci's research, they were able to take the lab in Wuhan was able to take the virus they found in 2012, right? They actually found COVID-19 in 2012 when it killed 3 people.
I mean, COVID has been around for a while.
No, COVID's been in forever. We're specifically talking about COVID-19. Yeah. It actually killed 3 people in a mine, in a guano mine in somewhere around Wuhan, right? So 6 people came out. They were super sick. They came to the hospital. 3 of them died. Nope. By the way, pandemic did not start in 2012. That's when the virus came out. So anyway, the whole gain of function research is basically they're trying to figure out how they take a virus from animal to human and then human to human.
Yeah.
And those two steps are very, very difficult, from an evolutionary perspective, and especially if you're trying to program it, it's still very difficult.
And the reason they do that is so that they can create vaccines and therapeutics that prevent it from killing off humanity. That's the gain of function research. That's the rationale. They're like, we're going to make this fucking crazy chimera virus, and we're going to just release it, to the public. That's not what they're doing. They're creating these freaking home brews and then trying to find cures for them.
Right.
But,
which
they're making a monster, and then, if it releases to the public like it did in China and then to the rest of the world, like they've done, unfortunately, a lot. I mean, you could look at the laundry list of pandemics that have come out of China because of gain-of-function research. And I think Obama banned gain-of-function research in his second term. But he didn't just ban it from being done in the United States. He banned it from being used, like U.S. funds and U.S. taxpayer money, for funding it anywhere in the world. Right? He was like, no more of this. And then Fauci changed the definition of gain-of-function research so that he continues to do gain-of-function research.
Right.
And it's pretty wild to see that kind of behavior from a government official that wasn't elected to any kind of an office.
That's right. And just to reiterate what you said there, so gain-of-function research, the rationale, the reasoning that they use, that Fauci will say why he does gain-of-function research, is so they could develop this monster, and then to figure out, to then develop the weapons to kill it.
Right.
It makes no sense. You don't invent a problem to then go and solve. That doesn't make that. There's no benefit to humanity there. And as a matter of fact, there are several doctors that will come on the record saying just that, and they have. Right.
There have been a lot of doctors that are like, this is the most dangerous and stupid thing that humans do.
Yes. Yeah. It's because it could create a global pandemic and kill everybody. Right. Yeah. And so anyway, the point of COVID-19 though is that they had these 3 people that were killed by it, and so it's like, aha. Wuhan lab was like, well, hey, we got a virus that does the first thing. It goes from animal to human, and then the human dies. Perfect. Okay, now we just need to take that virus and then make it go from human to human. It already kills them, so we're good to go. Now we can spread this shit everywhere. And that's where Fauci's research came into play. And 8 years later, bammo, they had everything that they needed.
Right. And, the conspiracy theorist part of me thinks that they released it on purpose, but it is what it is, because there were even some cases in California in early 2019 that they were saying that COVID-19 was already in California.
My uncle got COVID-19 in November of 2019. And they were like, what is this? And so we had just barely understood it from China. Like, if you remember, this whole thing started in Seattle, right? It came into Seattle in the the hospital that treated like older people.
That was like one of the first ones in like January, February.
That was January.
First recorded cases.
Exactly, the first recorded cases, and I lived like 5 miles from that place. I was like, I was terrified. But my uncle, who lives in Phoenix, got it months prior to that. It was like, how? And like I was joking with you earlier, like you sped run to go get it because you got it so early. But then my uncle, he was OG. He
was a year before I was.
Yeah. And like it doesn't make any sense. And so it wasn't on our radar at the time. So it was like, why are you so sick? And then it wasn't until later that we understood it was COVID, and then he got long COVID, and it's just been a fucking disaster. But there's something else going on that we don't know about. It could have accidentally escaped, but it accidentally escaped way earlier than January 2020.
Yeah. I mean, it was all throughout China in September, October of 2019. I mean, they were shutting down cities, locking it off. You couldn't leave Wuhan, the province of Wuhan, to go to other provinces in China, but you could fly from Wuhan to the rest of the world.
Right.
That was an option, but you could not go to anywhere else in China. The borders were closed. But you could fly. You could fly. China was like, yeah, fly. Do whatever you want to do. And the crazy thing too is if you look at what was happening in China during that time, they were stockpiling respirators and masks and therapeutics for this. They were stockpiling this. They knew it was coming,
Right. The other and this comes down to the psychopathy of Fauci. When you have COVID early, if you get it early, you start getting the sniffles. You think you might have it, right? There were no tests at the time, but getting to the hospital early, talking to your doctor early, they can test you. Like, hey, you might have it. Here, take some ivermectin along with some zinc, get some vitamin D, get some sun, and you'll be fine. It's just like the flu, no big deal. Yeah. You'll get over it. Okay. At that point, the viral loads in the back of your throat and your nose, but specifically the back of your throat, which is where the majority of the virus is going to be, is really, really low. And is the chances of you giving it to somebody else at that point are also exceedingly low. It's not going to happen, right? So you can go to the doctor, you can go to the hospital, you can go get your treatment early, and you're not going to infect anybody on your way there. You don't got to worry about any masks, and then you can get back, and then you'll take your ivermectin, your hydroxychloroquine, whichever one works better for you, and whatever other stuff, and you'll be fine, no problem. But that's not what happened. If you recall, Fauci was telling people, do not go to the hospital until you have respiratory problems.
Right.
And at that point, when you have respiratory issues that requires hospitalization, the viral load in the back of your throat and nose is at its zenith. It's at as high as it will ever get. You are guaranteed at that point, if you're talking to anybody, you are going to probably end up infecting them because it's just spewing out of every pore of your body, but specifically your breath, right? Because you're breathing it out. And then the water vapors of your breath, the virus will be carried in that, and it will land on everybody around you, and you're going to fucking give it to them. And it was at that point that these people were then allowed to go to the hospital. It is then when hospitals were allowed to admit a patient to come see them at that point. So you're
after it was like life-threatening.
It's like the worst possible scenario. You're literally creating a zombie apocalypse by amplifying the effects. And he did that purposely.
And then anybody that you've come in contact with immediately has to go home, quarantine with their families. Nobody can leave for 2 weeks until it's run its course.
Yep.
It was insane. And, they were locking old folks up with COVID positive. There was no separate quarantine. They were like, all of you old people into this room.
Yep.
Survivor, COVID edition. It's insane.
And on top of that, there are these studies of outside the United States. Actually, no, even in the United States. I think one of them's in New York, where a doctor, his entire office, actually, not attached to a hospital, it was just his own practice, basically gave the government the middle finger and said, fuck you, we're not going to go do this thing because it is our job to treat the ill. We're not going to wait for them to get more sick and then refer them to your hospitals. We're going to treat them. That's what we do. And so they had at one point, there was a whole bunch of elderly that came to them, like just kind of like they came from some like a nursing. It was a nursing home. Came to them like, hey, we're having these issues. Help us, right? It might be COVID. So the doctors went to the nursing home, treated everybody in the facility, right? I think they used hydroxychloroquine and zinc and some other stuff, right? 0 deaths. They all had. It seems like almost everybody in there ended up getting COVID at some point, but because of the treatment that this doctor offered them, which was being used everywhere outside the United States, they were just fine. Nobody died. They were just like, all right, cool, thanks. They had minor flu symptoms at the worst, but other than that, they were perfectly fine. And there are several studies like this, by the way.
Yeah, and I think that's the primary reason that, Como came out and even did that interview. It was so that he was getting ahead of all of the lawsuits that would potentially be out there. He's like, hey, man, you guys did this voluntarily. I just provided you with some information and everybody just fell in line, right? Because this is one of those things that everybody should be getting sued for. There should be class action lawsuits for this all throughout the country, bankrupting people and politicians and this crap. This is the kind of crap you should get sued for. Misinformation of this level, because you do have a responsibility in a government office to be as factual as you possibly can. But because laws are on the books that say politicians can say and do whatever the hell they want.
1989, they made it illegal. A law was passed to make it illegal to sue a vaccine maker for the side effects of a vaccine. I think it was in 89. Why would that be a law?
Yeah.
That's a law that exists on the books right now.
I believe it.
Yeah. It's insane. Okay. Give me a second, Zach. I'm going to be right back. And then let's get into the border crisis.
Yeah, I was reading an AP article. about the cost of immigration. And I don't know why every time I go to AP, I read this article and I'm just like, you're giving us misinformation. You're supposed to be an accurate place, you know?
I
And
mean, they are for the most part.
yeah,
Right?
but they're giving us numbers from 2013 in an article released in 2024. You're telling me that the most accurate information that you can get is how much it costs for immigrants, undocumented immigrants to be here in the United States is $8,000 a person, right? And that's just, you know, baseline, like what we're kind of giving them. It's not the hotels, it's not the school systems, it's not the free healthcare, it's not
The use of our roads.
the use of our roads, the 20% down payments on housing, 20 fucking percent. We're
Now
coughing up.
zero.
I watch, huh?
It's zero in California.
No, this is in California.
So did you?
This is in San Diego.
So the new
Oh,
law,
you're giving them a zero down payment.
they don't have to even come up with a down payment.
Right.
They then the state will back a zero down payment loan to buy a house.
Yeah.
If you're an illegal alien.
I was watching a mayor down in California talk in San Diego because he was on a border town, talk about the problem that they're having in San Diego, you know, with undocumented immigrants. And it was kind of refreshing to see somebody from California, especially San Diego, talking about this like candidly without trying to like play a shell game, you know.
Right.
But it's frustrating when you get AP and all these other news sources that are using old as shit numbers. I mean, the economy is vastly different than it was in 2013.
Yeah.
Like, our numbers don't compare. You can't use old data. And they're coming up with a number like $155 million for 12 million immigrants, undocumented immigrants in 2013. Those were the numbers in 2013.
I don't even believe that.
That's what I'm trying to say. Right.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at 2013's numbers and it was like 155 or something like that, Trump coming out and saying, oh, yeah, it's like closer to freaking $500 million annually. Right. 450 something.
This is in 2016.
This is today.
Oh,
this is today in 2024. I think he just came out and everybody's like, where are you getting your numbers from? Where are you getting your numbers from? It was like this huge news article. It's the
right.
Going through the circuits right now. You know, I know it's kind of a weird segue to go from COVID to the border crisis.
It's
right?
not, though. It's not. It's
but
yet
it's
another
just like,
place where the left is lying.
Yeah. The thing that bothers me, right, is they have these strict requirements for U.S. citizens with COVID. And you're just getting lambasted with all these things. And then they're like, yeah, you dudes that have no vaccines and no health records or anything like that, walk right the fuck in and go to whatever neighborhood you want. You know, all throughout the pandemic, you were having people locked up in your houses and doing all this crazy ass bullshit, not letting anybody do anything, but you were letting undocumented human beings cross into our country and go and do whatever the fuck they wanted to do, bringing all sorts of pathogens from all over the world into our country. And it's not just a Central or South America thing. This is literally a global rush of immigration to the United States through the southern border. Yeah. So it just blows my mind that thought process is happening where the left is like, you've got to be super strict and you got to be this type of person, but oh, sorry, you're an undocumented immigrant. Come the fuck on in. Do whatever you want. The world is your oyster. Welcome to America. Let's roll out the red carpet.
Right. So let me just add some more color here. So for those of you who do not know, if you want to come to this country from, you know, pretty much anywhere in the world except for our allies. So if you're like, you know, Western European, Japanese, right, you need to go to an American consulate. So let's just say you live in Ivory Coast, West Africa, and you're like, I want to go to the United States. You can't just get on a plane with a passport and come to the United States. if you manage to get here, customs will be like, no, you're not coming in the country. Where's your visa? And you need to have one. Well, how do you get a visa? Step one, you need to go to an American consulate and you apply for one. And there's a whole process in and of itself. And then you'll eventually make your way back to that consulate, and you're going to have to show up with some documents, proof of identity, proof of, nationality, and your vaccines. And depending on what part of the world you're coming from, you need to have unique vaccines. West Africa is going to be different. Let's say India, that's going to be different from like the Middle East. And you need to have, certain things. And if you don't have those vaccines, you're not coming to the fucking country. You're just not going to get you're not going to get your visa. That's just end of story. And you're not going to make it out of your country to get onto a plane to come to the United States, let alone come up to our border. And so what Zac is saying is that if a lot of people don't actually realize how bad the border crisis is. You go to our border, you're not going to find a bunch of Mexicans coming into the country. For the most part, that's okay. I mean, we are brothers, right? We share the same landmass, but you're going to be finding people from all over Latin America, South America. We see people coming in from the Middle East, from India, from all over West Africa, North Africa, East Africa, South Africa, all over the world. People are dropping their identification cards, their passports, whatever it is that could possibly identify them at our border, and then coming in with no documentation. And then to Zac's point, they're literally they literally are allowed to go wherever they want to go because we have no process to contain them, to hold them, or let alone catch all of them, because so many of them were coming across the border, and our border patrol is tiny.
I mean, in places they are literally cutting the wall open and coming straight through the holes that they've been cutting in the walls. And there have been videos of Border Patrol watching them cut the border wall open.
Yeah.
And you're like, how is that even possible? Right. And it makes me a little bit sad for our country that our law enforcement, our Border Patrol, all these agencies that we pay great money to, I hope, probably not as good as you would want them to make, but they're getting paid a lot of money, but they're terrified of losing their jobs, their pensions, for getting, you remember the mounted horse Border Patrol agent that got lambasted by Biden because he was on his horse and he was whipping his reins around to control his horse. Didn't even get anywhere near the people coming across the border, but it looked bad in the picture that guy took. Right. And even the photographer was like, no. Like I took the picture and that's not what happened. Right. But it was just the right angle that they could make that Border Patrol agent look like he was freaking moving slaves along. And it was just awful what they put that person through. And it's the same thing with cops. It's the same thing with everybody, that they're just making them to be these incredible villains for doing their job and trying to protect our country, which is what we pay them to do.
Right.
And so now nobody wants to do anything. They want to just sit on their hands and let it all play out. And we don't have anybody safeguarding our borders anymore.
I don't want to get into the cop thing because I think I have a feeling that we're going to vehemently disagree on the policing in this country. But on the border, we do agree. Yeah. And so you look at the charts, and by the end of Trump's presidency, illegal border crossings were down to its normal, very, very low minimum. Okay. Yeah. Which is where it can just sit.
And right? No terrorist watch list people.
No terrorist watch list. I mean, it's just, but the thing is, it's just a very, very small amount of people were making it across the border in the first place. Okay.
Like less than 1,000 people a year.
Tiny amounts, right? Border Patrol was well in their rights to do whatever they needed to do to keep these people out. Right. And that was at the end of his presidency. There were some spikes and whatnot as he was getting his footing and trying to figure out how to make everything work. That's totally fine. But by the end of the presidency, it was really low. Well, Jesse, that's because it was so low because of COVID. Bullshit. COVID wasn't a thing yet. He was handing over his reins and doing January 6th. That's what was happening, not COVID. COVID wouldn't be a thing until much later in January and February. All right. And so at the time,
well, that's not true because the last year of Trump's presidency was when COVID was coming around, right? 2020 was, and Biden didn't take office until 2021.
Right.
But even
Yes.
through 2020, when COVID was running rampant through our country, there was very little immigration to our country.
So then people try to make the point, though, that they had closed the borders. Like it was because of COVID. It was already low. It was already low. Like if you just need to look at the dates there and follow that logically across.
You can go from 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020, and they stayed static.
They were like I said, you see spikes over the summers and whatnot, but it's
100 people spike.
No. It's more than that, but it doesn't matter.
It's not.
It was. I dug into it, but it doesn't matter. At the end of his presidency, his border patrol policy was working. It was working. I don't care.
They remain in Mexico, Title 42.
The whole 9 yards. Everything was coming together nicely, and people were staying in Mexico if they managed to get there. Okay. Biden Harris come along, and now we are at the worst level of border crossings in the history of the recorded data. It has never been this bad, ever. And why is that? Like, have you ever put any thought towards that?
Well, we've talked about this in previous episodes, and I really truly think that they're losing a lot of their traditional minority vote in this country. And so they're bringing in people that will vote for them for generations because they're giving them a different chance. They're giving them a new chance at life. It's the same things, same tactic that Lyndon B. Johnson did with the welfare states and trying to win the black vote. If you look at the decisions they're making, it was the same decisions they're making now. So if they give a lot of money and a lot of benefits to people and change their lives so that they endear them to their policies, and now they've got 30 million people that will vote for them and allow them to run the country into the ground, and they won't even think about what they're voting for. They'll just be like, the Democrats gave me this new life in America. We have to keep the Democrats in power. Otherwise, Trump will kick us out, or whichever Republican will kick us out. So, I mean, it's got to be the primary motivation for the Biden Harris admin. It's got to be.
If voting might be one of them, I give you that. And what really adds credence to your argument is all of a sudden on August 17th, subsection C was added to Title 18, where in U.S. House Code. Okay, this was voted. This was voted into law, and this particularly applies to the illegality of illegal aliens to vote in our elections. Prior to the 17th of August, if you were an illegal alien, you could not vote in a federal election. Okay, you couldn't do it. It was illegal. And then all of a sudden, subsection C was added to Title 18, section 611, which says, I'm just going to quote it because it's so fucking crazy. If you, as an alien, you're allowed to vote if you reasonably believed at the time of voting a violation of any of the previous subsections that you were actually a U.S. citizen, meaning where the previous subsections say it's illegal for you to fucking vote. But if you believed you were a U.S. citizen, then you're good to go. That right there is bonkers. That's pure madness.
Yeah.
Why would anybody want to give an illegal alien the right to vote? That's not how this fucking works. You have to be a citizen of this country if you want to vote in this country.
Gotta be paying taxes.
You got to pay taxes. You got to do the whole 9 yards. You got to be a
citizen.
Can't be a felon.
Can't be a felon.
You have to be anyway. So now all of a sudden, you have the highest rate of people coming into this country illegally suddenly being given the right to vote. So how can that possibly be interpreted any other way?
Yeah.
In that, suddenly you have this massive, new group of people that can suddenly vote for you. I guess that's pure craziness.
I mean, there's multiple avenues. Obama has actually got a website out there that specifically trains you on how to vote if you don't have the ability to vote as a U.S. citizen. how to vote in this country. And a lot of it revolves around the use of mail-in ballots, because you don't have to prove any kind of identity at all. You can register and you can get it sent to you, and you can make your vote that way. So I'll have to look up the website and I'll send it to you. But I didn't believe it when I was watching this video. And Obama, he gets on these interviews with people and he talks about this website where Get Out the Vote or something like that. And it floors me that this is where the Democrats are trying to continue their power, because they've alienated a lot of people in the last 8 years.
I'm one of them.
Slowly but surely, they have alienated a lot of people. I have always prided myself on being moderate, on being as unbiased as I possibly can. Everybody has bias. You can't avoid it. But trying to keep an open mind to everything and be able to have a conversation about anything, that was like some of my pride,
right?
Being able to be open-minded. I don't know that I will ever vote Democrat again in my lifetime. Like, ever. It's really hard. It's really hard for me to imagine it,
Yeah. And these are like the insidiousness of this is that it's eroding our democracy. It's like, that's what's happening here. It's like we're slowly but surely losing the vote. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's been gone for a long time with electoral college and things like that. It makes it super easy to corrupt the vote. I mean, just look what happened with Trump in 2020, right? All of a sudden, out of nowhere, overnight, if you look at the as the polls were coming in and you're looking at the linear graph of the results, it was Trump leading with the other guy with Biden losing, and it was a good margin. There was yep. Yeah, Trump was done. Trump has got it.
It was a landslide victory.
Yep.
And I went to bed thinking Trump won.
Yeah, we all went to bed thinking Trump won. And then overnight, we wake up and there's this spike in the graph where all of a sudden, oh no, we uncovered this treasure trove of votes
straight
at
the fuck
11:48 p.m. that shows hundreds of thousands of people suddenly voting for Biden.
All mail-in ballots.
Yeah, it was like
all mail-in ballots.
So it was really interesting is that there was actually one of these. So later, after all this went down, one of the officials working in one of these counties recognized that there's potential for abuse of the system and was like, wait a second, if I understand this process right, anybody can order a mail-in ballot and then submit it. And not just one. You can do this as many times as you want. You can just keep on ordering them. There's no provision in the law here that says that you can only order one, or
you can get them in multiple states.
Yeah, or there was no safeguards in the systems that they erected to ensure that a mail-in ballot wouldn't be sent to the same person more than once. And so this person who worked in the election committee ordered 3, okay, to prove to her point that this was a problem. And then she submitted those 3, and she just put in 3 different names, okay, and submitted them in to the system. I think she ended up voting for a candidate. There's no way that this candidate was going to win, right? Just to ensure that she wasn't really mucking around with the results. But then she recorded everything that she did and watched those votes get counted and then assigned to that random person who was never going to win in the first place. But it just made it through, and it made it through on the official on the official stamp, the official record that these 3 random nobodies ended up getting their vote counted for this other nobody.
Yeah.
Then she brought it up. She brought it up and said, hey, look, guys, I tried to warn you all about this system. Nobody would believe me. So I went and exercised the exploit in the system, and here's the results. She was thrown in jail.
Yep.
The system remains
She admitted to a crime.
She admitted to a crime. She committed a crime. And so they're like, well, that's you. Nobody else is doing it. We have no evidence to suggest nobody else is doing this. It was you that did it, and now you did it. You're on a federal election, or it was a state election. Off to jail you go. And so she spent a year in jail or something like that. I think she's still in jail. This just happened. And she's she was literally trying to fight the corruption in the system and ended up in jail being accused of corruption. The very corruption she was trying to fight.
What's fucking insane to me, right, is admitting to a crime, right? never do that. But that they would throw her in the lock.
Crazy, right?
Why would you lock her up when she's just literally pointing out? Like, I get, hackers do this shit all the time. They exploit a fucking vulnerability, and they're like, "Hey, look, you have this vulnerability." Usually, you get like $100,000 or $1
You get
million,
a bounty
whatever.
for it. Yes,
Yeah,
you get a bounty.
it's like, I found a vulnerability. You should pay me. You're welcome. Not here, And then another thing is like with Dominion, right? They're outsourcing that data, and it's hitting other countries throughout the world. That raw data is hitting other countries throughout the world. There have been multiple studies about how the data flow works with these voting machines, and Dominion specifically. And it's like, why, with all of the technology that we have, why is it leaving the country to get tabulated? Why is that even a thing that needs to be happening? We're America. No. We should have plenty of technology here in this country to keep that in an internal network where all the data is kept safe. It should be no different than keeping all of the paper ballots under lock and key. No different. So it just blows my mind.
It's a ginormous mess.
And we're verging way off of our original topic. This is going into election interference, which we're going to have another podcast when me and Jesse aren't either vacationing or getting 70 hours a week of work.
Well, this is part of it, though, right?
The
border crisis feeds the other crisis. One begets
all
the
of
other.
It's all connected, like a ball of yarn. You pull on it, everything moves.
Did you hear? I know you hear it because we were texting about this the other day. But what's really interesting is that the Michigan governor, right, Gretchen Whitmer, signed a law, Senate Bill 603, which literally made it illegal to recount a vote purely on the allegations of fraud.
Right.
What does that fucking mean?
I mean, and they're going to repeal it as soon as this election's over, and a Democrat might win. Because, maybe. Well, they will. I mean, every time they sign into law something, because the Democrats brought about the filibuster law, right? Because they were in the minority at the time, and they were like, we need this filibuster law to blah, blah, blah to help fight the man. And so they put it in, and now the Republicans are using it. They're like, we need to get rid of it. We got to get rid of it right now. How are they using this power? Blah, 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 blah. Like, it's insane to me. Right.
It's a double talk. They're pros. Well, I mean, that's to make a good politician, you have to be able to do that.
All politicians are this way, every single one of them. But it just seems like lately the Democratic Party has been doing some really shady ass bullshit. And I'm like, wow, why are people still voting for them? Like, how have we not just cleaned the entire party out of office and reelected people that are sane and want good things for the country?
Because of your crazy people, Zach. That's why. Because it's so easy to go look at some of the leaders in the Republican Party and be like, why the fuck are you affiliated with the KKK? You basically came to the Senate hearing in your KKK outfit. You were literally taking it off.
The Democrats are the ones who founded the KKK.
They're the motherfuckers that are perpetuating it. Okay, listen, all I'm saying is that is why. So the GOP could very, very easily stand on this high ground of morality and actually fight this shit if they would stop with this other stuff. Like, they don't have to go into the bayou erecting fucking crosses on black people's houses and lighting it on fire in 2024. They don't have to do that. I don't know why they still continue to do so. I'm being facetious here. The thing is that some of these things that are leaking, they're so easy. And don't get me wrong, before I say this, people are people. Some people are good, and some people are bad. And then guess what? Even the good people occasionally make stupid decisions, and they say stupid things. And then, and so you can even have like a Republican governor or senator or representative, right, who's doing great things today that did some shitty things when they're in college, right? And so because of that, though, the left, with all the media that they have, including social media, is able to take those things they did 10 years ago or longer, right, and make it center stage. And
so shame them into quitting, basically. Because if they don't have any shame, like Donald Trump, he's got no shame, right? You can't shame him. They found that out. The only way you stop Donald Trump is with a bullet, right? So because he's got no shame, he's not leaving office.
Right.
And now Democrats are like, oh yeah, you don't have to be ashamed of anything. Let's just go.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's kind of brought the crazy out. And one of my first inclinations as to loving Donald Trump, right? Loving this guy was how much corruption he was uncovering just by existing. Right.
Yeah.
We were seeing laws being changed, all of this zany crap that you would never imagine would happen in real life happening in real life. I'm like, wow, that's like third world bullshit right there. But it's happening in our country and we're watching it in real time. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? How is that? How are we doing that right now in America? And it's been 9 years of it. So it's like they've got to be almost out of cards at this point, you know. But they keep throwing out randos or changing something so they can get it done.
The big issue is yes, Trump may have done a lot of good, okay, but then Rudy Giuliani goes and holds a press conference at the Four Seasons Total Landscaping. Okay, it's hard for the GOP to come across as competent when they hold this press conference at a landscaping company because they couldn't figure out which Four Seasons they needed to be at. Obviously, they wanted the hotel, but they ended up at the landscaping thing. How are you going to vote for somebody so stupid? Right? That's the other thing. Is like, don't get me wrong, I am not voting Democrat right now. Yeah. There's just no fucking way because of the insidiousness. But my point is, as a Democrat, it is so easy for me to not vote for Trump and his people when they do shit like that.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, listen, there's corruption on the left, but you guys are just fuck ups. Yeah. Right? I will rather take the corruption and have the country not just literally sink into the Pacific Ocean. Because under the helm of Rudy, it's going there. And while I don't believe that anymore, that is the argument I have to make to my friends and my fellow Democrats. Because I think here now we actually do want the Four Seasons guys back. And as crazy as that sounds, the country is in better hands.
Yeah.
Because they're not actively killing Americans. They're being stupid.
That's
just the American way.
The problem, I mean, there's a lot of problems with the Republican Party. I've never once been like, I'm a Republican, right? The problem that they have is they do a lot of amateur stuff. They don't come across, they don't have a clean message. You know, they don't have the same ability to be lockstep like the Democrats do. You know, like anytime anybody on the progressive left says something, the rest of the Democrats get in line 100% all day, every day. You just see them it's like some phalanx and you're just like, wow, shields up, spears out. They're rocking and rolling. They're here for keeps. Republicans don't have that. You know, they have a network and they have this, but they're just not as professional at it, you know? So I don't know. It's whoever's organizing the Democrats, you know, not this ticket, Tim Walz and freaking Kamala Harris it's a clown show. It's like, it's like I'm watching the tiniest car roll up to a stage and just a shit ton of clowns come out of the car.
Yesterday, CNN was questioning it. They're like, "What is this?" Like, even
it's a sacrificial. It's a sacrificial lamb. That's all it is. They're like, let's take the two low hanging fruits on any ticket, and let's just put them out there. You know, you got stolen valor, tampon Tim. You know, he's a shit show. Every time they turn around, there's a new rock with just shenanigans under it, and you're like, what? Fuck?
Yeah, I'm really not sure what's going on here. Do they pick such an incompetent ticket because they're going to rub it in our face when they're eventually elected?
Oh, God, like, yeah, I'm telling you right now, like if that ticket wins, I'm giving up. I'll never vote again.
Dude, probably. I am for one, I am not positive Trump survives to November 2nd.
Yeah.
I don't think he makes it. Personally, if I'm a gambling man, I'm putting $100K on him, meeting a lead end.
Dude, you told me that CNN was live broadcasting another one of his things, and I was like, "That's it. That's it. It's him getting shot right here.
Yeah. Dude,
That's
I
our
watched that
tell.
whole thing.
It's our tell.
I'm wondering if they're waiting to him to go back to Butler, because he's going back to Butler.
I know he's going, but they started putting bulletproof glass around him now. So
I wouldn't go back to Butler because that's like the signature. Like, hey, you missed your shot on J13, but now you get your second redemption.
I don't think that Trump cares about his life anymore. I think he's just hit every milestone that a person can ever hit. I am arguing he doesn't either. He's just in it to do as much good as he can before he just kicks the bucket. I know you hate it when I say it, but like there's no other reason for him to be up there other than like trying to fix a country for his grandchildren. Literally, there is no fucking reason.
Up until again January 12th, I would have argued with you here. But after J13, it's clear that people are now trying to actively kill him. They can't poison him. They can't run him out of office. They can't imprison him. So now we have to just shoot you in the face.
Fuck, dude, all they have to do is just poison some Big Macs at the local McDonald's, and they got it, man.
Right. And so apparently all this stuff isn't working. So now they're at we're going to shoot you in the face. And so now if Trump was a true megalomaniac narcissist guy, if he was a true sociopath, which is what the left wants to present him as,
right,
a sociopath would step down. Like, no, my life is way more important than any fucking agenda.
Because they're so narcissistic and self-centered.
Yeah. Like, I got all this money.
They don't have sacrifice. Like, he's got billions of dollars. He's got a really nice mansion on the beach that's got a golf course. The only thing, he's got a supermodel wife. He's got a loving family. He's got grandchildren. Why wouldn't you just gracefully have fun at your mansion and grab women by the pussy?
So that's exactly it. And that is by all psychological terms, the person, the left that I, for the last 8 years, have come to know Trump as, right? The psychological definition of this man would be to, after being shot at, to immediately stop.
Right.
Like right then and there. He would have stood up and said, all right, I'm out, bitches, and left. But he didn't. He stood up and said, fight, fight, fight. Yeah. And is now doubled, tripled down on everything.
Yeah.
That is not the person that the left was portraying him to be. No. And so for everybody who's listening, that is what broke me. Because, like, again, I was drinking the Kool-Aid, and the Kool-Aid says he's this sociopathic narcissist. And a sociopathic narcissist would immediately cave. Immediately. The second that bullet came out, done.
Yeah.
But that's not what happened.
He's like, oh, this is real. This is real.
Yeah. And now he's not going anywhere. Now you literally have to shoot him to stop. That's it. And that's where this border crisis comes in, and like why it's such a fucking problem for this election, because it's more than just the election though. Like the other points I wanted to talk on, like to kind of elaborate on. If you think about what this border crisis does, how do you control people? You control people with fear.
Yeah.
You control people by ensuring they're suspicious of their neighbors. You don't want to talk to your neighbors, right? Because you don't know who they are. They could hurt you. They could have a different opinion. And this woke fucking culture is ridiculous. Now they might have a different opinion that you're going to have to encounter and deal with, but you don't have the skin. You don't have the fortitude to be able to take and ingest an opinion that doesn't exactly match your own. You're going to, vomit all over yourself, piss your pants, and run back to your safe space. Yeah. It's so fucking stupid, right? You see it in video. I'm a huge video gamer, and in video games, this community is huge. You have to be super fucking careful with what you say, or else you will be banned. You literally, a very popular streamer on Twitch.tv was banned in League of Legends for telling somebody to suck my ass. Banned. That was too much. That is so mild in the gaming culture.
Super mild.
Insanely mild. That doesn't even count.
Might as well just said, hello, how you doing today?
Exactly. That is the appropriate. That is exactly what that is. Yeah. It's a greeting. All right. And so when 20 years ago, when we had Ventrilo and TeamSpeak, it
ICQ.
Was vile shit that we were yelling at each other. It's hilarious. People were so brilliantly colorful with the way that they described themselves and each other's genitals and how they might be used to interrupt the life of somebody else. It was amazing. Okay.
Mostly your mom.
Oh, yeah, it was so bad. Anyway, that baby jokes, the whole 9 yards. It was crazy.
Yeah.
You can't even get close to that today. And so now, why am I saying all of this? Because this is the culture we live in, this culture of fear, this culture of hate.
Censorship.
And censorship, you name it. And what is our retreat? Our retreat is largely this digital life, because I can come into this digital world, exist in my safe spaces, and I don't have to interact with anybody. All right. One of the things that this border crisis has done is it's brought in fentanyl. It's brought in, gangs. It's just exacerbated the drug problem, right? If you go look on the streets of any major city in the United States right now, it's just littered with drug abuse, and people are just keeling over, in their own psychoses. Crime is up. It's all just bad. So why, Zach, go outside, close your window, ignore it. Don't ignore your neighbor, ignore the problems, and go into your online world where where I will allow you to have a comment. Go ahead,
Right.
post a comment. Go ahead. That's your comment. You own it. Feel good about that comment, right? As long as it doesn't meet the community guidelines.
Right.
And it gets worse in that. So now you're scared. You're inside. You're doing your thing. Education going in the shitter as a result of this. Your kids are now going into crowded schools. They're like your American kids are now competing for a seat in an American school with illegal aliens and their kids. And again, I'm not trying to be not emotionally bankrupt here. I feel for these people. They're fleeing their countries for a better place.
Yeah, because
totally
their economy sucks.
Yeah,
and
we
they can't
probably
turn
put
anything
their economy.
around.
Right,
No,
and there's a good
we
chance
definitely tank their economy.
There's a good chance the United States is responsible for it. Yeah. But at the same time, we have to look out for ourselves first. We have to put on our own mess before saving the person next door.
Right.
And as long as there are veterans and their kids on the streets, there's just absolutely no fucking way that I could possibly commit resources to housing, homing, educating an illegal alien. I'm sorry, not until the people who fight and die for this country are taken care of.
Yeah.
Them first. And that's still a big problem.
The one thing that a lot of what's going on has robbed us of is the community. We don't say hi to our neighbors. We don't talk to random strangers anymore. Like people are fearful to have a conversation with just a rando person. I mean, when was the last time anybody that I'm talking to right now just randomly had a conversation with somebody that they had no idea who was? I mean, I do it all the time. I'm a weirdo. I'm just like, hey, how you doing? And just start small talk and then see what happens just while we're sitting there waiting for coffee or something. But people don't do that anymore. And that lack of community, the lack of family, it hurts us a lot in this country because we don't have the ability to have a conversation about what matters anymore because we're too afraid of offending someone now. It makes it hard for us to progress and to have an American culture and things that matter to us as Americans be brought forth into a positive experience for Americans, right? Which is what, as Americans, we should be all about.
Exactly. So you have that. School shootings are on the rise. Nobody's doing anything about it. Our government is not doing anything about it. Literally nothing. It's thoughts and prayers. Both sides of the aisle. Yeah. Thoughts and prayers. So schools are just a dangerous place to be right now, right? There's if you have a kid and they're going to K through 12, private or public, there's a real chance that they don't make it home that day, right? So there's some more fear for you to live with and deal with on top of everything else that we've just described.
So now you're homeschooling your kids.
Yeah. And inner city schools, they're not getting any help. They're getting worse, right? It's just getting more and more mayhem for them to have to deal with, again, more people coming into their schools. They're already understaffed. They're already underfed. They're already undereducated. And now they have more people to deal with, which is just a losing situation. These kids, they have parents. And those parents don't own their houses. They are living paycheck to paycheck. Yeah. They're renting some shithole. And anything that rocks the boat could make them homeless, right? Any little old thing.
You stub your toe the wrong way and you miss 2 weeks of work. I mean, that's game over for a lot of people.
It is
right now.
And it happens. It's happening right now. Yeah. And all of these corporations, all these mega wealthy people and the corporations they own these like, triplexes, quadplexes, apartment complexes, these projects and things like that. Not the people living in them. They're, again, all that money is going to super wealthy. It's going from the lower class to the very, very upper class.
those are some of the best investments that you can make is real estate. I remember a couple of years back, the big investment firms were buying up childcare services. I mean, have you looked at childcare? You probably haven't, but some people are paying $800 a week for childcare.
Right.
And if you're a part-time worker, if whoever's staying at home watching the kids is deciding, waffling back and forth on whether or not they're going to stay at home with their kids and watch them, or they're going to go out and get a job. A lot of the time, the job that you get doesn't even pay for the childcare. So it's like,
hell no.
Now you're a single income family, and single income families can't really get ahead in America.
No.
Like if you're making 85K even, and that's not a lot of families actually make that.
No, it's like
when they do the median wage is in America, they're counting the 1%.
Right.
So you got to look at what the median wage is in America without the 1% and the top 10% of earners. It's like $40,000, $50,000 a year in most places here in America.
Mm-hmm.
And
like 44,000, just almost 45,000, I think is the number I read.
So I mean, you start looking at that number, and you wonder, like, how the fuck is anybody paying for $2,000 rent? Which is like where most everywhere is paying in rent
right now,
$2,000 a month. I thought it was just an Idaho thing, but it's like all over the damn place.
It's crazy.
Most everywhere is $1,600 to $2,000 a month in rent, and you're looking at $45,000. It's like no way, no way.
So now you don't have any money to begin with. But then the few cents you have is going to landlords, and then the price of that property is again being driven up by all these people coming in illegal into the country who are getting free government bucks to go get housing and stuff like that, which is further exacerbating the problem, making the rare real estate already rarer. Mm-hmm. So you don't get to own anything. You don't own your car. You don't own your house. You're just living paycheck to paycheck. And again, we're kind of building up here, that this world of fear that the uber elite are kind of like, forcing us into, which is massively terrible. They own the social media. They own the news. They own everything that you're consuming. You don't get an opportunity to take a breath of fresh, unfiltered reality. Everything you're getting is coming from just a handful of people.
Just force fed down your throat hole.
Exactly.
What's scary is now they're coming for your food supply. They're buying up farms. They're buying up manufacturing. I mean, there's like 3 major companies that own all of the meat processing in the country. I don't know. It's pretty terrifying to see this huge movement towards like isolating you and making you dependent on them. Yeah.
So speaking of food, the thing that the middle lower class are all reliant on is food from grocery stores, food from fast food places, right? That's where we get the majority of our food.
Right.
That food comes from farms where Monsanto's pesticides are used. Monsanto's pesticides are only allowed, like Roundup, are only allowed in the United States. They're banned everywhere else in the world. Yeah. Why is that? Did you know that the formula for Roundup was originally developed in Nazi Germany?
Yeah, I did.
In World War II. Okay. So
biological warfare.
Yes, it was actually, yes, it was. And so anyway, bought up by Roundup, turned out to be a great pesticide. That
weird
pesticide, guess what that pesticide does when it's introduced to a tadpole, a male tadpole? Turns it into a female frog.
Oh.
It's an estrogen progenitor or something like that. It promotes estrogen in any given system. Right?
They're making gay frogs with the water.
Mm-hmm. This is the thing. And
I know. It's crazy.
So what are we currently experiencing right now? This new pandemic across the United States is this crazy, like basically that came out of fucking nowhere, this LGBTQ trans movement, right? I have nothing against trans people. Be safe and happy in your own skin. You be you, right? There's nothing that the United States or any person should do to inhibit your ability to express yourself. No. However, what this demonstrates is that these pesticides are actually fucking with mothers and their children and the embryos of these soon-to-be children. And there's a gene expression that's happening that's being forced on them unwittingly at a very young age. And so these people are born with all sorts of confusion in terms of who they are and what they are because of the food that they're eating, and they have no choice. You have no choice in the food that you eat in this country if you don't have any sort of money. You have to eat what is cheap, most available, and that is these pesticides, these foods that come up from these pesticides. It's crazy. And I've just started reading about this now.
And what makes a great lifelong customer, Jesse? Trans people. Makes a great lifelong customer. Anybody that's got any kind of cancer, anybody that's got any kind of sickness, anybody that needs gene therapy for the rest of their life, you are a lifelong customer.
Exactly.
Right. For however long that life is, you are a lifelong customer.
We will have to get into the FDA later because Ozempic. Are you tracking the Ozempic thing?
I know people that have been taking it. I know people that have been taking all kinds of. It's the shortcut, for weight loss and all that stuff.
It's a shortcut, in that you're taking yet another cocktail chemical to cocktail of chemicals to go and deal with a problem that is again rooted in the food you're eating.
Yeah.
So basically, fructose is just naturally occurring sugar, right? Yeah. You see it in everything that in all the fruits and berries and whatnot that you eat. And what it does in the animal kingdom, when you ingest fructose, it inspires you to be a little bit more, paranoid, a little more aggressive, right? Because you want to eat all the berries. You don't want the berries to go anywhere else because you need to survive. Eat more berries, the more likely you are to survive. And additionally, a lot of that sugar, that fructose specifically, is quickly metabolized into fat, right? So you can live longer, right? Because you need to hit times of scarcity. You need to have fat, right? Yeah. And so the animal kingdom, though, you don't see like fat animals, but they do have fat in their body, and that's where they get a lot of it comes from.
I mean, I hate to say it, but like you actually need fat as a person, right? Like, maybe you don't need as much fat as I intake, but like you need fat. Like if you just ate lean meat, you would starve to death. Like there have been people that have shot a moose, ate just nothing but moose, and they've starved to death because they're not getting enough fat. It's too lean.
Right? Fat is not fructose.
Well, fructose, it goes to fat storage, right?
No. So fructose and fat are two different things, but fructose promotes the growth of fat. And so check this out. In a given glass of orange juice, right? Or sorry, no, in a can of Coke, you will consume as much fructose as you would had you eaten 15 oranges. Nobody's eating 15 oranges, right? That's just not going to happen. You're not going to sit down and eat 15 oranges. But one can of Coke,
if you did, you're going to be sitting for a little bit longer too.
You're going to be having a day. But the point is that it's also addictive, right? This sugar is addictive. Yeah. The effects of fructose on your body are ginormous. In that you're literally programming yourself to exhibit these animal kingdom things I was just kind of talking about. We can get into it more in another podcast, but that is just the very fundamentals of what the FDA is promoting. And did you know that the FDA in their literature suggests that an infant and kids should be consuming 10% of their diet, their daily intake should be these saturated sugars?
They just changed their food pyramid like a year ago, and it's awful.
Yes.
They're like, eat cereal out of a box.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like the number one thing that they're like, this is the best thing for you.
This is the FDA.
Yeah, I know.
And another institution.
I remember growing up with the food pyramid and thinking that was the gospel. That's how you should eat.
Yes.
Just all these grains and all these carbohydrates and things like that.
I'm going to stop here because the FDA anyway, because I don't want to get into it because it doesn't really relate to the border, but it's really just yet another institution that is lying to you.
Yeah.
And if you are a left-leaning person, if you find yourself a Democrat and you're super highly intellectual and you do everything that daddy government tells you to because they're scientists that run the FDA and they couldn't possibly be corrupt, you're a fool.
Yeah.
Do your own independent research. Use that brain of yours and go look into it. It's crazy. Anyway, any closing thoughts, Zach?
Oh, no, I don't think so on this. The border it's out of control, right? And I'm not trying to come across as xenophobic, it's just come in, make the country better, but come in documented, come in with a background check, come in so we know who you are, so we know where you're living, how we can track you down, how we can have a court case with you. 9 years for a court case in some of these examples of the people who were honest enough to turn themselves in and
Actually
get
show up,
a court case. 9 years for some of these people to get a court case. That's insane to me. And I think we've covered some of the stuff, in previous episodes, but it's just, I don't know. It makes me so sad for where we're heading, where we are as a country. We are in the wrong direction, 100%. And I hope there is the ability to do a U-turn a little bit and go back to some kind of sanity and middle ground. Because I don't know that we get there.
I don't know. Yeah, I think my final thought would be that exactly that is that we need a U-turn, and I think we can get there, but it's going to take a lot of people just opening their eyes, seeing what there is to see with their own eyes, reading the literature, and appreciating what it actually says. Stop trusting the government, for God's sakes. They are people. They're not infallible. As a matter of fact, they're in one of the only places that it's going to be super easy to be corrupted by money, fame, and influence.
Yeah.
Because of all the money that exists right around them. So and I'm really speaking to the Democrats out there. Is like, look what you're actually voting for. Look at these policies. We already talked about a couple. We talked about two: the border crisis and COVID, where you were lied to. You were 100% lied to, and we bought it because I don't blame you. I up until just recently, I was one of those people until I actually started reading the goddamn, primary articles from the NIH myself and seeing what COVID did to you. And the same thing with COVID, with the open border policy. Yeah. I mean, Kamala and all these guys are saying that they're going to go and fix it. Bro, you made it the worst it was in the history of this country. So don't tell me you're going to go fix it. You literally can't.
It's like you've already been in office for 3.5 years. You had 3.5 years to do something about it. If it needed fixed, fix it now. Don't kick the can down the road and create a huge problem and be like, look how big this problem is. I'm going to fix it if you keep me in power. They'll just kick it down the can down the road another 5 years and be like, look how bad the problem is. I'll fix it if you vote me back in. It's just over and over and over. Democrats have been in power 16 of the last 20 years. Am I wrong in that?
No. Trump was the only 4 years.
Okay. So like literally from 2008 when Obama came in, we are now 2024. Sorry. Mm-hmm. It's only been 16 years.
16 of the last. Yeah.
Of the last 16 years, the Democrats have been in power for 12
of the last 16
fucking years.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me with a straight face that we aren't where we are right now directly because of Democratic policies. Like literally look at any big city, look at any place that it is blue up and down the board, and just ask yourself that honest question. Like, where are we and why are we here? Who's been in power? Why are we doing this? And you can say, oh, it's the Republicans. They're fighting against us at every step they possibly can. There have been multiple windows where for 2 years at a time, it has been full House, Senate, and President blue. And same with the red side. And they weren't doing anything to fix anything either. It's just a lot of finger pointing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you make a valid point, and that's what I'm trying to come to the realization of. As I'm actually now, we've talked about it, but I'm doing the research.
Yeah.
But it's taking me time, and I do nothing but live and breathe this stuff. So when I get home at night, where the average American is going to go watch some TV, spend some time with their family, this dickhead is literally just reading more news because I'm an idiot. And so I'm going to continue doing that night after night, and slowly but surely this stuff is surfacing and my opinion is changing. Because you're right. It was blue for the last 12 of the 16 years. And America, I would much rather go back to 2005 United States than today. 2005, we had our random issues. Not like this.
I mean, the worst thing that ever happened was somebody got called a homo back then. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, that was it. That was the hardest issue that we faced in 2005 in America.
there wasn't the. I mean, yeah, the Palestinians were still a thing. Now they're probably going to be done. I don't see how, unless something happens dramatically. We're talking about genocide. They will all be dead in a year, thanks to that whole thing. It's fucking crazy. Anyway, take me back. Take me back to 2005.
Yeah, I think a lot of old people say that shit, Jesse. But I mean, so like one thing specifically stands out to me, and I think this will probably be the last thing so we can close out this episode. But a lot of people have told me when I bring up crap, they're like, where's the primary article on that, Zach? Where's the primary article on that, Zach? Where's your documentation? I'm going to say the same thing, right, to everybody. Go out, actually read some shit. Fucking look at what's happened, where we are. There are receipts out there now. Plenty of time has gone by. You can go back and look at these receipts and you can say, how are we here? Why are we here? Do a little critical thinking. It's what the left and science wants you to do. Critical think. It's not that big of an ask.